You too. Bye-bye.
Guys, I see my first guest on the night. I am pumped for him. I'm going to play a little song from him. This is 10 years ago off a solo album from his. This is a great album called Playground Philosophy. This is Talking to Myself with the great Nate Morton.
And now, back to Around the Kit with Joe Gansas.
Guys, we are back around the kit, 646-787-8027. What a tremendous track. What a tremendous album. It is my pleasure to welcome to Around the Kit the great Nate Morton. Nate, Joe Gansas, Around the Kit. What's up, brother?
What's up, Joe? What's up? So the first thing I have to say,
Go ahead, man.
well, the first thing I have to say is thanks for having me on. But the second thing I have to say is, so that record that you just played that track from, it's not all, just for your listeners to know, it's not all drum soloing duet.
Oh, no. No. No, actually.
Unfortunately, for better or for worse, I actually do, quote unquote, sing on it.
Yes.
For better or for worse, I actually do rap on it at times.
Yes.
And there are other instruments on it as well. Thank God.
Actually, my favorite song on it is called Best in Life with the great Candace Lindsay.
Ah, yes. Now, that's interesting. Do you know Candace?
No, but I love her voice. It's absolutely beautiful.
She's outstanding. She's outstanding.
Great,
She's
great.
a wonderful vocalist that I've known for a long, long time here in Los Angeles, and she has the ability to sing rock music yet with a soulful edge, which is it's really nice. Yeah. She was a great contributor to that track. It was awesome.
Nate, first of all, I didn't get a chance to welcome to Around the Kid, and how you doing tonight, brother?
Man, I'm doing good. I've had a good day, which
Right.
for me, these days, a good day is a day that means I got to go out with my family this morning and took my kid to his tennis lesson that he had this morning, and had lunch with the fam, and made it home in time to chat to you.
Great. And we are pumped up. I've been pumped up, bro, for about a month and a half since we first talked. But I got to tell you, to be honest with you, I first got on your radar on the Rockstar show, Supernova, and I remember one song you did before we get into your whole life story. I remember you did a remake of Jimi Hendrix' Fire. You remember that? And you killed it, bro. My God, I have been a fan since then, and I applaud you so much, brother. Great job.
Well, thank you. That was a lot of fun. That show was a lot of fun, and then B, that track in particular was a lot of fun. If memory serves,
you killed it.
I feel like Magni may have sung. Was that Magni? Did he do that?
Yes.
But I actually liked that tune so much that I actually cut like a track without drums. Our guitar player on the show, a guy named Rafa Moriera, on that show, cut a guitar backing track for me, and I actually use that song sometimes when I do clinics. That was a great show. Great band. Many of those cats I still play with in the band on the Voice. That's when I met. That show is when I met my musical director and big brother, Paul Merkovich, who's my musical director on The Voice, and he and I have played, a lot of gigs and different things from that show going forward up to The Voice, and then that's also the first time that Sasha, my bass player, and Paul and I had played in a band together. I had played with Sasha previously on some different work, but that was the first time that trio sort of took effect, and that's been a great part of my life since 2005 when we met.
Great. Guys, we are talking to Nate Morton. Just love this guy. I love that he's always in a pocket. Nate, usually my guests come from a not-so-famous town, a city. Take me back to Nashville, and 5 years old when you started playing, and you got your first set, I think, at 5 years old. Now, usually people come from cities where music is not popular, but you had a lot going on when you were a kid, 5 years old in Nashville.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, Joe. I do get asked about being from Nashville. I have to be honest with you, though. I was just a kid there, and so I wasn't exactly on the scene, per se, I was influenced. The scene, I can tell you my influences at that time at 5 years old. The scene, quote-unquote, that I got was basically hearing my father playing music, basically nonstop. A lot of the time people say, are you from a musical family? And the reality is no. I didn't grow up in a house with a sister playing piano and a dad leading a band and, mom singing in church or whatever, leading the choir. I grew up basically in a house with my father playing music just about every waking moment that he was in the house. So I got to hear a bunch of stuff. So that was one of the main things at 5 years old that sort of, took hold of me. The other thing is that my parents met at Tennessee State University, which, there are certain college marching bands that do, dun 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 dun. We are really square. And then there are other college marching bands, right? And then there are other college marching bands that do the,
Okay.
So TSU was that. Tennessee State University was that. So I loved going to the football games at 5 because that was something that influenced me. And I loved Animal from the Muppet Show at 5 because that was something that influenced me. Yes. Because I thought, here's this dude, and he's insane, but not only is his insanity, not a bad thing, it's actually a really good thing. And here he's actually channeling his insanity onto this instrument and propelling a band with energy. And even if I could never have expressed it that articulately at 5 years old, that was definitely, the impetus behind my attraction to Animal on the Muppet Show. So you take those three things and you put them together. You take my dad constantly playing music. You take the influence of me getting to hear the Tennessee State University Marching Band and me getting to watch Animal on the Muppet Show. And that's, that was the kernel of the beginning of my little musical interests right there.
Take me back to your first real band. Was it Akamili? Is that how you say it?
It was Akamili, Joe. It was Akamili, and I'm so glad that you asked me about that because literally there's a producer. He's a producer now, but he has done many, many, many things. He's a talented graphic artist. He's a talented musical artist. He's a talented producer. He has a band. They come sort of in and out of hiatus. They also go off and do other projects, and they come together periodically and release records. A band called TV on the Radio. Are you familiar with that band?
No, but I will be.
It's okay. It's okay if you're not. They're very much an indie art rock kind of band, based originally out of New York City. But one of the founding members of that band is a guy named Dave Sitek. And so Dave Sitek has since gone on to work with, a long list of, big artists as a producer, as an engineer, as a writer even. And so the very first time that I ever met Dave, I was basically, would I have been like 9th grade maybe, or 9th or 10th grade, in my high school band room, playing on the drum set there, and Dave Sitek stuck his head in the door as he was walking by the hallway and said, you're good, I like the way you play, I have a band, I want you to be the drummer. And I basically went, okay. And so we got together. Actually, he didn't say I want you to be the drummer, but he said I want to jam with you. And so I piled my Pearl, what did I have, like an Export maybe or something like that, into my mom's 78, Pontiac Firebird. I had to sit in the back seat. I don't know how familiar you are with those cars, but I had to sit in the back. It was only a two-door. So I couldn't fit the kick drum into the back of the car. So I basically had to put the kick drum in the front seat and squeeze me into the back seat, holding my snare drum on my lap. And, I took over a kick and a snare to Dave's house, and we played, all afternoon until the police came. And Dave was running around playing guitar, and I was playing drums, and we were basically pouring with sweat and, having a great time, like I said, until the cops came and said, you guys are making too much noise. And then they went away, and we started playing again until they came back again. And that was basically the very first time that I ever played with any other musician. That was the very first time that I'd ever played drums with any other musician, and it happened to be Dave.
Okay.
And out of that came the band Akamili, and that was my band when I was in high school in the Baltimore, D.C. area, Columbia, Maryland, to be exact.
Great.
But, yeah.
Great story. I see you play with some great artists. I could just name a couple right now. Vanessa Carlton, the late, and I'm so sorry she's not with us no more, Natalie Cole, and Shaka Khan. Besides the drums and every night playing with them, I like to ask my guests, what do you learn from, other than drums, what did you learn about yourself playing with these great artists?
Well, you know what? Let me speak specifically to Natalie Cole. To that gig, because those other gigs were great gigs, cool opportunities, all of it. Natalie was another thing. I mean, she was on another level. And so with her, it's very interesting because I can talk in practical terms about what I learned, because on Natalie, I don't fancy myself a jazz drummer, Joe, by any stretch. But, one way or another, I get a call from Natalie's musical director, who's a woman named Gail Dietrich. And then, what do you know, I'm playing with Natalie Cole. And so because I don't fancy myself a jazz drummer, didn't then, don't now, I took the gig as a challenge, kind of rather than saying, I'm kind of not the greatest at this, so I'll just wing it, see what happens. I kind of took it as like, this is going to be my jazz drum college right now. And so what I would do, for example, I threw myself into listening to a lot of brush guys, because a lot of that gigs was jazz ballads with brushes. And we would have a sound check from, say, 2 to 3, 2 to 4. And then the gig would be at 8. And between, the band would take a break, go eat, etc. Well, for me, between 4 and 8, I would basically take my snare drum off the kit, and I would take my brushes, and I would go and I would find a broom closet or an empty room somewhere in the hotel or wherever, and I would literally put my headphones on. and I would shed my brush technique to, to jazz tunes for 3 or 4 hours before the gig, or as long as I could, before I had to get ready for the gig. So in that respect, that gig was a great education because it sort of motivated me and it forced me to spend some time working on my brush technique.
If I can.
Yeah, of course.
Nate, that right there, that's a story that I go through so much for myself. Right there, that tells me one word: determination. How you wanted to get better, you were determined, and that's a great story. And it's just it's a story for younger drummers. If you really want something, it's the old saying: if you really want something, you'll get it if you try and practice. And that's just a great story, and I applaud you so much for that.
Well,
great
thanks,
job.
Joe. And you know what? If I can further your sentiment, I would marry determination with opportunity. I looked at it as an opportunity.
Sure.
In other words, like I said, I could have blown it off. I could have thought, this is so not my cup of tea, whatever. But I basically looked at it kind of like, when am I going to have an opportunity to delve into this stuff with one of the great luminaries of our time at it? You know what I'm saying? It's like,
and Nate,
how silly would I be to squander that opportunity? So that's kind of the way I approached it.
Yes. Do you also think it was, and a good thing, it challenged Nate Morton right there?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Great,
the other thing,
great.
too, I just did a clinic at Berkeley literally last week. And someone asked me, they said, how much on the gigs you do, how much involves reading? How much of what you do involves reading? Do you walk into sessions and they put a chart in front of you? Do you learn songs on the boards with charts in front of you? And I said, I have to be honest with you, probably 90% of what I do, or maybe more than that, probably 95% of what I do is either no charts at all, or if there are charts, it's me scribbling out my own charts or whatever. I said, it's been rare that I've really had to pull out my quote-unquote reading chops. However, Natalie Cole was a gig where I did. So speaking of challenges and speaking of additional, things to throw yourself into, it's a big band gig. And she had at the time about 220 charts in her book.
Okay.
And so, we didn't have 4 weeks of rehearsal to commit to memory 220 big band charts that she could randomly call at any time. So basically, the way that gig worked was you had your book of your 200 charts, and you would get a set list under your door, 30 minutes before the gig that said, here's the 25 songs we're playing tonight, or here's the 23 songs we're playing tonight. And so, I take that again. You were talking about challenges, and I'm using that to relate to the fact that reading was something that I didn't do a ton of. I studied it at Berkeley, but that was another sort of fun and challenging aspect of that gig as well, that makes it unique to any other gig I've ever done. So, yeah, it was. I mean, I'll tell you, Joe, it was a whole transformation. Like, I had long dreads at the time. I would play the gig, I would put my dreads back in a ponytail, I wore a suit. I specifically went out and I found like a kit with an 18-inch kick drum, or no, it was a 20-inch kick drum, because I was, at the time playing a lot of pop and rock gigs. So I really took it as a challenge to try to play the chameleon, to really try to get into that. And sorry, I don't mean to ramble, but it's funny.
No,
because
go.
I was doing sporadic dates with her. So, for example, I go out one weekend, put on I thought I was real cool too. I had like a monochromatic kind of black suit, black shirt, black tie, you know what I mean? Have my hair back in a ponytail, and I would really try to take on that role of being that guy. But then I'd come home, and maybe I'm doing a session the next day with a guy who's a total 3 days grace, like that kind of rock stuff,
Right.
So yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun, and that gig was that's a great gig that you mentioned, in terms of things I've learned or things that I've had to be challenged with, or growing experiences.
Well, Nate, I believe this is my opinion, and when you're reading a chart, try to follow me. When you're reading a chart, right, and you're playing, it's not the same, brother, if you remember it. I think you play different when you're reading a chart. Do you agree?
I think the challenge is to be able to read a chart. Like the fact that if you're quote unquote reading a chart, it generally means you don't have it committed to memory, which can also sort of generally transfer to mean you're not as familiar with it as things that you have committed to memory. I think the challenge, Joe, is when you're reading a chart to play it as though you're not reading a chart. That's the challenge. Like the challenge is to be able to read it down, but play it and really own it, in a very short amount of time, so it doesn't feel like you're learning it as you're reading it down, or you're mechanically trying to just get through the things. It's like you've got to kind of go at it with reckless abandon and just be like, I'm going for it. I'm going to play this like I played it my whole life, So yes, there is a tendency to sound different when you're reading versus playing something you've committed to memory. And ultimately, I do strive always to be off book. I never want to be reading things because like I said, when you're using your eyes, it hinders the amount for you to use your ears. You know what I'm saying? The less you're using your eyes, the more you can use your ears. Having said that, hand in hand with it is, yes, when you are reading, it is my goal to sound like I'm not reading. If that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. I just see, I attribute it a lot of times to singers. I have friends who go up and play cover bands, and they're great singers, Nate, but they have like 14 songs and all the words are written out. And I see them reading the words while they're singing live, and I think it takes away from them actually singing better, if that makes any sense.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And, the other thing, too, I mean, this is all a very big, it's all a very big sort of puzzle, and all these different aspects fit into it. I was in college, and I'm doing a rehearsal, and we're reading charts. It's a rehearsal for like one of the big college shows. It's going to feature, the 10 top vocalists at the college, and we're learning these charts. And the bass player is a guy named Reuben Rogers, who's an outstanding bass player. Played with Joshua Redmond for many years, Wynton Marsalis, all sorts of cats, right? So we're playing, and as we're playing, Reuben completely blew through a change on the chart, like totally missed where it was supposed to go back to the bridge or whatever it was. And we stop. And I look over at Reuben, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, man, I'm sorry, I wasn't reading the chart. I got too busy playing music." You know what I mean? So that does. Right, exactly. So that does speak to what you're saying. And the funniest thing about it, and this is just, man, I've been fortunate to have some really great people in my life along my journey. He is one of them. Because literally, that was a comment he made when we were playing in college, and he was there like early entry. He was like one of these child prodigy knuckleheads. Right? So he's there, and literally he's like 16 years old. Like that was a statement that came out of his mouth at 16 years old. And to this day, 44 years old, it's still just as meaningful. I'm like, dude, you just knew. Like you just knew, you know what I mean? Right. So that all goes with it as well. It's like there is that goal to get off the chart. Right. But at the same time, if you're not off the chart, the next goal is to play the chart as though you've known the song your whole life. And then even without that, there's this issue of sometimes you need to just let the chart just go away, so you just play some songs. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's more important. Sometimes it's more important to play music than to necessarily make every change spot on perfectly correctly, every single hit, every single, dotted I and crossed T. Sometimes it's okay.
That's my point. Yeah,
but it's just
that guy.
Sure.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. That guy you're talking about, who, what he did, that bass player. He went off, but in my book, he really didn't do anything wrong in a way. He was just playing like he wanted to. I mean, I know he was off, but, I think he was just doing, it was cool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I mean, he was a phenomenal musician, great player, still is, incredible guy, sweetheart, and taught me a lot, even at age 16, about music, so. Yeah.
Well, Nate, you talk about some great people in your life. Let's talk about Grant Menefee.
Yes, Grant Menefee. I was just there. I just did a clinic with Grant Menefee on the same little trek. Yeah.
What is? Give me a little background on you and him.
When I was in middle school, I had basically been self-taught primarily from age 5 or so all the way up through age 14, 15, and it was just basically me back in my bedroom with a drum set and, a stack of records and playing along. And when I was in about 4th grade, the band director, a guy came to the school to teach the drummers like one day out of the month, and he sort of showed me the rudiments, He showed me some rudiments. But other than that, I hadn't had any lessons. And so when I was transitioning from middle school to high school, I knew I was going to be in band, and I wanted to be a snare drummer. I wanted to play snare. I didn't want to mess around. I didn't want to play toms because they're too heavy. I didn't want to play bass drum because it's too heavy. I didn't read well enough to, be in the pit orchestra, so I was like, I'm playing snare.
Right.
Well, basically I got a snare piece to essentially audition with, and it was like, what is this? And so I basically started asking around. One way or another, I found my way to Grant. He helped me prepare for what I was going to have to play in terms of going into high school to try to be a snare drummer. And from there, he also, got me into all the other things that I've been fortunate to have benefit me throughout, this little journey that I'm on in terms of playing Latin music, playing jazz,
Great.
playing rock, working on independence, working on polyrhythms, working on reading, all of that stuff, listening to a lot of the stuff that I still listen to today. He turned me on to John Scofield. Blue Matter remains one of my all-time favorite, jazz LPs. And so Grant was also, and this is maybe the biggest role that Grant played in my life. At the time, Grant Menifee, everyone looks at you when you're a kid and you're playing drums and you go, whatever you're playing, if you're playing an instrument, and you go, I want to be a pro musician. I want to be a professional musician. And they go, yeah, sure, kid. Okay, so but what are you going to do for a living? And understandably. And so Grant was, I think, the first person somewhere around my early high school age, 9th, 10th grade, was one of the first people, if not the first person, to say, if you really dedicated yourself to this, really put in the time, and really put in the hours, you just might be able to make a living doing this. And that was all the motivation I needed, because the idea for me at the time of working a straight job, like working a job where I go and work 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, and wear a suit, was, and with all due respect to anyone who does that, but I just knew that my personality was such that would not be a fun way for me to spend the next 35 to 45 years of my life. And so for him to say, you know what, you might be able to make your way banging on stuff with sticks for a living. And that was all, like I said, that was all I needed. And so I practiced and I worked hard at it. And, in great part, I owe that to him, sort of where I am today, to him saying, you could actually do this. So Grant taught me a lot musically, but then also on a professional level and philosophical level sort of said, things that were motivational that helped me, move along my path.
Great, absolutely great. Guys, we're talking to the great Nate Morton. I've been on this guy's radar for about 10 years now, and he is just a killer drummer. Love everything he does. I wanted to ask you, Nate, because I am a kind of drummer when I do a lot of recordings in the studio, and all due respect, I know you maybe play for some artists that you're just coming in and doing sessions or different stuff, but when I record, today we're doing a lot of copy and paste. For drummers, I don't like it. Years ago when we recorded, we would punch in. Anybody who doesn't know what punch in is, if a certain part of the song comes up and you make a mistake, you could just punch in and go there. I like to do the whole song over if I can. What kind of drummer is Nate Morton?
That's a great question in terms of my approach to recording and all of that. Here's the thing. I'm an old man, right? I'm 44 years old. So I'm
47. I'll be 47.
Oh,
Thanks,
okay.
mate.
Well, there you go, buddy. We're the same age as far as I'm concerned. I went to college 20 some odd years ago. The technology did not exist on the level that it does today with the ease to just cut, copy, paste, click, drag. It did not exist that way. And so as a result, in fact, I specifically remember drums being one of the most difficult instruments to try to punch in and fix because cymbals would be ringing and how do you get the tone. And it was not as easy as clicking and dragging a crossfade like you can do now in Pro Tools. So what would inevitably happen is they would, you would track, let's say, all 5 instruments at once or 4 instruments at once, let's say. As the drummer, you would play and play and play, and let's say the first take you do, you kill it. But the other 3 guys screw it up. Next take, you kill it. The other 3 guys screw it up. Next take, you kill it. Inevitably, the take that you screw up, all the other 3 guys will get it perfect. And they'll go, that's the one. Right? Right? You know what I'm saying, right? You've been there, right?
Yeah.
You know, the one you messed up is the one when the majority of the rest of the group get it right. And so they go, that's the keeper. And then because of the difficulty with punching drums, they would go, oh, that's fine. That's fine. No one will hear that. No, that's fine. It'll be fine. So as a result, I really trained myself to try to play a, quote unquote, perfect take down top to bottom. Not to mention the fact that, it wasn't until I was older that I even realized a lot of the tracks that I would hear would be what you're saying. People punching in, or people taking the verse from take 7 and the chorus from take 3 and the bridge from take 8. I didn't even realize that people did that until, I don't even know, until I was out of college, because the guys that I went to college with at that point weren't super great at doing that. So many of them anyway. So to bring it back around and to circle back around to your question, yes, generally speaking, for organic and philosophical reasons, I like to just bang down a take that requires, little to no editing. And the way that we work on the show is when we go into the studio, we basically play down each track, 3 times, typically max. And then they basically go, what was the best take? Okay, take 2, boom, done. And there's not, just because of the speed with which everything has to happen, there's not a ton of editing. It's not like we can spend 4 hours cutting one song and then edit between 27 different takes. And so, so like I said, so because of the speed that has to happen, that's not a luxury that we're even afforded. So pretty much it is on us to play down, for lack of a better term, a spot-on perfect take. I mean, there are exceptions. I missed the very last note of the outro or whatever. Right. But yeah, no, that's we were on the same page. Let me put it that way.
Well, what my whole point here, Nate, is, and guys, we're talking to the great Nate Morton. My whole point is here, with today's technology, it's a shame how some singers, when they sing live, it's really bad, and I think it gives a bad precedent to the record company and that person. I almost feel bad for them because they're being exploited. But getting back to the drum part, I'm the kind of drummer, Nate, that I just did a recording recently, and they wanted me to I did this really cool double bass lick, and it was great, and I messed it up later on. They wanted to copy and paste that. Nate, it took me $200 more. I had to spend $200 because I had to do it the Joe Gans's way. I had to do it all over again. I don't want to copy and paste because to me it's like it's almost fake. People don't. I don't like it at all. It's so easy to copy and paste. It's like fake.
Yeah, well, you and me, we're kind of dinosaurs in that respect because we want to do the shit right. Excuse my language.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
but yeah, no, I get it for sure.
And I know for you, maybe you're working with somebody who's an artist, and you might just have to say what they, if they say copy and paste. I don't know if you have that control, but I know you're in a difficult situation if you're working with somebody. So, I get that facet. But to me, with today's technology, the best way for me to see somebody is live. I got to see them live, how they perform live. Because in the studio, I think anybody could sound good. But I wanted to get your take on it. That's all.
Well, it's funny. Let me just interject, since you've mentioned vocalists now a couple of times. And it is interesting. The studio and technology have done an interesting thing to the paradigm of what we listen to now. We've been so conditioned to hear perfect everything. Like, you know what I'm saying? Right. It's like we're so conditioned to hearing everything perfect. The days of listening to an LP and going like, oh, did you hear that? No, what was it? Right. Oh, it was the guy dropped his cup in the middle of the take and it hit the floor and they just left it in. Oh man, that's really cool. Like, that doesn't happen today. You know what I mean? And it's to the point where, since you mentioned vocalists, I was going to say, we just did a thing where I was working with Miley Cyrus and on the show, that is. And it's funny because at one point she would sing something as an example for someone to sing on the show, and she would sing it. And Miley Cyrus is a great vocalist. She's like an incredible singer, right?
Good.
But it's funny because she would sing something, and someone would go, "Wow, she can really sing!" Like they were surprised.
Right.
In this day and age, it's actually surprising that if you get into a room with a hugely successful pop artist, that they can actually sing, and it's not a completely studio fabricated, contrived thing. She can really sing. So just that's just to your point in terms of seeing it live and needing to see it to believe it.
Nate, I would rather somebody sing the national anthem live, make some mistakes, rather than lip sync.
Yeah, I hear you.
That's just how I feel.
I hear you.
Yeah. Make it real.
I hear you.
Guys, we're talking to Nate Morton, and he's given us some time tonight. You've done everything. You toured, studio, clinics. Is live TV sometimes a challenge?
There are certainly challenges about all of those things. Touring, recording, and live TV, they all have inherent challenges. I'll tell you something funny about me, which is weird. I used to play concert piano. Piano was actually the first instrument I took lessons on. I started taking piano lessons when I was about 7 years old. And I, did it pretty seriously up through high school. And it's funny because just my personality, I would be playing like a concert, like a recital, and I would walk out onto the stage to play my piece or whatever it was, and the whole concert hall would be completely quiet, and everyone would be watching, and I would sit there, and when I sat down at the piano bench, sometimes in the complete, utter silence of the concert hall, I just wanted to scream at the top of my lungs to do it, and I would literally have to fight the urge. Like, I would literally have to fight the urge of just crashing through that silence with me screaming at the top of my lungs, right? So I say all that to say this. Every now and then, I'll be playing on a live show, and I might be in the middle of a song, or I might be doing whatever. And yes, every now and then, I do just think to myself, if I just screamed at the top of my lungs right now, if I just stopped playing and screamed, no one could do anything about it. Now, blessedly, I have managed to quell that urge thus far. But the day I decide I never want to play again on live TV, maybe I'll give it a shot.
You just want right there. And you figure, what could they do to me? Well, absolutely, could fire you.
Right. But now, more to your point, let me answer the question a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
The challenge of live TV is to literally forget, or try your very best to forget that you're playing live TV, because it's very easy when you're doing something like that to get in your own head and to start to sort of overthink things and freak out, and it would be very easy to do that. And so what I try to do. The thing that I try to do when I sit down at the kit, whether it's a live show or whether it's, a show at a club to 25 people, or a clinic or even a recording, I try to just forget where I am, and I try to just focus on breathing and playing the music. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Playing the song. I have to focus on just playing the song. Don't worry if it's, 14 million, 15 million people watching in TV land, or 14 or 15 people watching in the club, or, a recording or whatever. I just try to focus on playing the music, and I try to make sure that I kind of get out of my own way, if you will.
Great advice. Guys, we're talking to Nate Morton. I got a couple more, Nate, and I appreciate this time, brother. Tell me why you're still playing Pearl drums?
Yes.
I own a Pearl Masters set and in wine red. I got to tell you, it's maple shell. What a great sounding set. Tell me why Pearl for you.
Sure, that's an easy one. When I first moved to LA and when I first started doing some work, my work tended to be with new artists. One new artist in particular, but tended to be with new artists, and I tended to be doing I tended to be doing a bunch of gigs where I'd end up flying to, Japan to do whatsoever this gig was, or, traveling and doing radio shows, and they've got to rent me drums, And at the time, my two favorite kits, or my two favorite companies, were Pearl and DW. And we're talking about several years back, and so DW was not, the everywhere, kit that it is today.
Right.
You couldn't always get DW drums, when you would show up somewhere in, Omaha, Nebraska or something, whereas Pearl was much more readily available. So that sort of made the difference between Pearl and DW. And then the other thing, excuse me one second. Sorry, my son is sitting here banging on the door.
That's fine.
I apologize. He's banging on the door. I'm like, dude, I'm in the middle of something. Go away. Sorry. Sorry about that.
No, be sorry.
Just saying that Pearl, right. So Pearl seemed to be easier to get everywhere. And then additionally, Pearl at that time made a drum rack. And I loved Pearl's drum rack. I loved that the bars were square, so nothing would ever slide.
Right.
And so really, I got to say, between the fact that I could get them everywhere and the fact that the vertical bars were, the horizontal bars were square, so gear wouldn't slide, that was kind of what made me want to go in that direction. And at that time, it was certainly not like, hi, I'm Nate, send me some stuff. It wasn't that at all. It was more like, hi, I'm Nate. I want to invest in a Pearl drum set. I want to start a relationship with Pearl. If it's okay with you, can I let you know periodically what I'm up to? And we'll just sort of start down this path together, and then maybe it'll lead to an endorsement at some point, if I'm lucky, whatever. And so that's when that relationship began. That was about 1998 or so, 1999, somewhere in that ballpark. So, cut to 17 years later, I'm still a very, very proud and happy Pearl endorser.
Great. Nate, is it true that you like playing chess?
It is true. When I used to tour more often, one of my favorite things to do is I would get, I'd bring a couple of my chess books with me, and on the in the front lounge of the bus, I would spread out my board on the table, and I would study chess, into the wee hours of the night. This doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a good chess player, Joe. It just means that I like to play. And then one of my fun things, again, is when I was touring more, I would know, like in D.C., I would know to go to DuPont Circle to play games there. In New York, I would know to go to Washington Square Park. In Philly, I would know where to go to play chess. In Atlanta, I would know where to go play chess. In San Francisco, I would know where to go play chess. Fifth and Market. So that was that's one of my pastimes.
Well, here's my whole connection with the chess and drums thing, because I think sometimes when you're laying back in a song and you got the volume, you're playing a little low, you know what to do now. Then you might throw a little couple, fills in there. So it's almost like you're using that pawn in a way. You might use your bishop here and there. So I think there's some similarity, because I love playing chess. It's the only thing I do that relaxes me. And I just thought there'd be a little, similarity with the moving to certain pieces, with the, throwing a double bass piece in here, or doing like a John Bonham fill here. So it's cool to bring them both up.
Well, and drumming is, drumming is patterns in time, right?
There you go.
Drumming is patterns in time, and chess is about pattern recognition.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to look at a board and being able to look at a position and go, oh, this is a position I know. Like, I know this position. I know that when, my bishop is, diagonally from this piece, I know if I sack that, I can gain, access to their castle this way.
Right.
They are sort of natural marriage. There's even an extent to where chess is very mathematical at times, and drumming, again, is like the marriage of math and notes. Rhythm is math. So it's basically the marriage of math and rhythmic voicings. So it kind of stands to reason that there would be a lot of crossover. I've never studied it, but I would bet that there's a lot of crossover in terms of the part of the brain that you even use when you're doing math, when you're playing music, when you're playing chess, when you're doing things that require calculation, pattern recognition, things of that nature. So I bet, and there's no coincidence that a lot of the time, there's a lot of crossover between guys who play drums and guys who work with computers. And I think probably for the same reason, for the mathematical connection between the two of them. Even, you got me on a total tear here, Joe, but even in terms of facial recognition,
sure.
Music helps kids develop spatial recognition. So it stands to reason that drumming would also connect that way in recognizing spatial recognition in terms of the way it relates to a chessboard.
Great. I agree totally. Nate, I can't thank you for this time, brother. Like I said, I've been a fan, and I will continue to be a fan. I've told all my listeners, and they were excited tonight. I just love your energy, bro. I love your attitude. You're so much like me in a way, and we both do play Pearl. My next guest tonight is a drummer by the name of David Stanek, and he has a fellow friend that I think you guys are familiar with. I think the guy's name was Ronnie Lowe.
Ronnie Lowe, sure, sax player. I went to school with him. I was roommates with his with a girlfriend of his at the time, and I know Ronnie Lowe very well. I played shows at Berkeley with him, and sure, of course.
Cool. Listen, Nate, I thank you so much, brother. At the end of my interview, I ask my guests one question, and it's an honest question. Whatever your answer is, it is. On a scale of 1 to 10, brother, rate this interview.
Oh, that's easy. That's a 10. That's easy. This has been no. That's oh, come on. Besides which, Joe, what kind of jerk would go? Like 2.5 maybe. No way, dude. This has been a fun chat, And
Good.
And I will tell you this since you asked, because there's nothing that I like. Well, I won't say there's nothing I like less, but I'll say there's nothing that I find sort of more frustrating than doing interviews and being asked all the same exact questions that lead to all the same exact answers. And I'm
Not
like,
with me. Never with me. Good.
Right. Well, I mean, let me put it this way. I've never gotten to discuss the correlation between brain activity involved in playing music, playing drums, playing chess, how that relates to spatial order, like all of that. This is fun stuff to chat about. And and getting to share about Natalie, that's not something that I often get to share either.
Yes.
So,
yes.
This has been great, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Don't even want to end this interview, but I have obligations, and I thank you so much, brother, and I hope we can do it again.
Hey, Joe.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question?
Anything you want.
Now you're in New York, am I right?
I'm in New York. Yes.
I might be out that way at some point next month. So my question to you is: Are we on for a game of chess at Starbucks or something like that?
I am a sore loser, Nate. I hate to lose. I got to tell you, I'm very competitive. I won't talk to you at all if we play and not friends during that match.
Oh, jeez. Oh, God. What have I asked for? What have I done? Oh, my God.
Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. We'll play chess, and that's it.
You know what's funny? I know you got to go. We can actually exchange some stories about famous historical chess grandmasters who would do all sorts of odd things when they played. Aaron Nimzowitz used to stand on his head in between moves on the board to generate blood flow to the brain. He would literally,
Great.
So, yeah, man, I get it. Well, we'll be in touch, and I'll let you know. And if I'm, I don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize our friendship. But I'll maybe hit you up when I'm out there.
Nate, I thank you so much, brother. You're a gentleman, and I hope we can do it again someday.
You got it, Joe. I'll chat to you soon, buddy. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man, so much. Thank you, brother.
Okay, bud. Bye-bye.
Right. Thanks. Guys, Nate Morton, I thank my next guest for giving me a little leeway.